I know my doctor still wants it. It's not my doctor. It's pretty much
Figure out how to turn the sound off. I'm going to call the meeting for the Mohave County Board of Supervisors, April 4th, 2022, meeting to order. If you please rise for an invocation from Pastor Bob and followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Dear God, our Heavenly Father, in the name of Jesus, we invite you to preside over this meeting. Even if we might have differing opinions, Heavenly Father, we ask you to give us a spirit of unity. Help us each to listen politely to others' points of view. Help us to work as a unified team to have a great outcome. Help us to work as a whole rather than individuals. May we have the spirit of camaraderie in this room and work together in our shared mission. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you, sir. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The Board of Supervisors, by motion, may recess into executive session to receive legal advice from the board's attorney on any item contained in this agenda pursuant to ARS 38-431.03A3, 4, and 7. Motion for an executive session to be held April 18th, 2022 at 9 a.m. for discussion and consultation with legal counsel in accordance with ARS 38-431.03A3, 4, and 7 to discuss items on the agenda with an asterisk.
Chairman Gold, so moved.
For that motion, any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The ayes appear to have it. Do have it. So ordered. Any litigation to discuss? Mr. Attorney.
No, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, sir. Committee or legislative reports, Supervisor Bishop.
Thank you, Chairman Gold. On the 24th, I attended the Arizona Criminal Justice Committee meeting. And then on the 25th and March 1st, I attended and chaired the CSA LPC meeting, both in Phoenix. And then on the 28th, I attended virtually the Arizona Association of County Elected Officials. And as of last Friday, that was the 82nd day of session down at the Capitol. There have been 1,764 bills posted. Of those, 118 have passed, and 106 of those were signed. So the LPC made recommendations on updates and voted to move forward with seeking legislative action to assist the counties on an ongoing basis, including taking action to repeal the ADJC cost shifts, restore pre-recession state cost share of the Justice of the Peace salaries, and the repeal and phase down of 2 mandated county payments to the state's healthcare systems. So that's my update, and thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor. Supervisor Angus on the phone.
She's in the process of rebooting her computer. She's going to let me know when she's in.
Thank you. Supervisor Johnson.
Not this moment, Chair.
Supervisor Lingenfelter.
Thank you, Chairman Gould. I'd like to offer up a few water updates this morning. So this session, the governor's office has introduced some legislation called the Arizona Water Authority. Progress on the governor's proposal has slowed over the past couple of weeks. Interested parties were asked to submit comments about the proposed AWA to the Department of Water Resources, and those numerous comments made it clear that there is still significant work to be done on that legislation. A major challenge with the authority is there isn't a lot of opportunity for conserving water, both surface water and groundwater, that we already have particular issues with in rural Arizona, outside the AMAs. All signs point to this being a long legislative session going deep into June. as it has been indicated by some that Governor Ducey may be unlikely to sign any water legislation until the Arizona Water Authority legislation is passed during a special session. Rural management areas. The RMA legislation has not received a hearing, as most people that have been following that issue for the last several legislative sessions, in major part due to Gail Griffin, the chair of the House Natural Resources, Energy, and Water Committee. However, in recent weeks, our team, including High Ground, has had multiple meetings with Ms. Griffin in an effort to hear and potentially address some of her concerns on rural management areas. There is hope that the RMA presents the perfect opportunity for conservation policy that can accompany the Arizona Water Authority legislation. We continue to pursue the RMA efforts and feel we're at a point where so many water items need to move through the legislature, and this would be a great piece of legislation for the state. Hopefully they'll take it up in special session as a part of all the water stuff that they're doing this year. So, and then the last update is on fourth priority, Colorado River water. Excited to report that House Bill 2389 passed out of the Senate Rules Committee last Thursday by a vote of 7-0. The bill would prevent future fourth priority Colorado River water transfers away from the Colorado River counties of Mohave, La Paz, and Yuma over to Central Arizona for their continued economic development growth at the river community's expense. There were some attempted arguments that the bill was unconstitutional, but the Senate Rules attorney spoke favorably of the bill, and it passed the constitutionality test. In Republican caucus, there were continued attempted arguments that the bill was somehow a violation of private property rights and the law of the river. Our team is working hard to combat those arguments and to secure support for the bill as it now goes to the full Arizona Senate. It's very interesting, and it's a strategy that all of the precedent, all the case law is on our side, but there are some that are fighting this bill. GSE Farms, who's pushing the current transfer to Queen Creek, they have a bunch of land in Yuma County, so they're fighting this because I think if this Queen Creek transfer is successful, they're going to go right down to Yuma County and start doing some similar things. So they're just trying to throw everything against the wall to confuse the legislators so that they'll vote no. So we're going to continue to advocate and cite case law, and hopefully we'll keep this bill moving forward. This is the farthest we've ever gone in a session. So that's all I have. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Supervisor. Supervisor Angus. We hear you. Do you have anything to share?
Well, I attended the DC meeting with CSA. Lots going on. For sure, the next month or so, it's going to be through a lot of good bills, a lot of bad bills, but we shall see. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you, Supervisor. County Manager's report.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, board members. I have a couple items, starting with, as you know, the governor ended the statewide emergency declaration related to the COVID-19 pandemic. We will be revising our tracking and reporting schedule to you and the public. I'd like to invite Public Health Department to outline those changes so you're aware of them in advance before they happen.
Good morning, Chairman Gould, members of the board.
Morning.
The termination of the governor's executive order and declaration, the termination of the governor's declaration of emergency impacted several executive orders, which related directly to reporting of COVID-related cases and other information. So there's pieces of information that we can no longer draw down and extract, and those are hospital data, the vaccines provided to adults, and COVID cases related to schools. Also, as you know, the cases that are reported to us are only the PCR tests. So antigen tests and home tests are not reported directly to public health. And therefore, there are limitations even to the case information that we can provide to you. So what we're proposing is to move forward with reporting twice monthly starting on April 13th. And we'll be doing trend information on confirmed cases, PCR tests, cases, and deaths reported to the county and the state, and transmission thresholds. So we'll put a transmission line, basically, which will help the public kind of understand more about where we're at and what the actual conditions are. Currently, we're in low transmission level, and the only thing that may change that is the Omicron BA2 variant. It's been making its way slowly across the country. So do you have any questions that I can answer about reporting and next steps?
Questions for Denise? Supervisor Lingenfelter.
Thank you, Chairman Gould. Thank you for the news, Denise. My only question is, how is this reporting helping to form Mohave County's policy moving forward?
You know, it's a great point, Supervisor Lingenfelter. I mean, our role is really just to try to inform the public as to what the conditions are out in the community. And we don't set policy or direction in that way. We just provide the information.
All right, thank you.
Certainly.
Further questions for Denise? Does this require board action, or can the county manager take this action on himself?
Mr. Chairman, board members, we do not believe we need board action. This is evolving. We have made some revisions before, but we wanted you to be aware of it prior to. We learned of this, as you know, on Thursday when the governor ended the emergency declaration. So it was too late to put it on the agenda. We did not think it was necessary, but we wanted to inform you of it prior to making any changes.
We appreciate that, sir.
One more item,
Sure.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, and that has to do with investing in our employees. We continue to do so by conducting Leadership Academy training for our employees, particularly those that are in senior roles and responsibilities, those that are group leaders, division managers, and even department heads. Those are being conducted right here in Mohave County, so no travel associated costs or lodging are being incurred. The training is being provided by experienced and talented instructors. We just completed the second training and graduated 25 employees. We like to think of those as our future leaders. Employees who have completed this leadership training speak very, very highly of it and are appreciative of it. So this was our second one. We did one last year in September, and we hope to do one more this year. It's our way of building the talent, the skill set, and investing in our employees. So thank you for your support. This was all budgeted in our budget process, and we will continue to build on that going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Approval of the March 7th, 2022 BOS meeting minutes.
So moved.
Second.
You've heard that motion. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The ayes appear to have it. Do have it. So ordered. Call to the public. Chris Rodarty. And Kenny Works on deck.
Chris Rodarty, Kingman. Good morning. Today I'm going to start off with a little Thomas Jefferson. I need to hear his words, and as I believe we all do. When tyranny becomes law, rebellion becomes duty. When once a republic is corrupted, there is no possibility of remedying any of the growing evils, but by removing the corruption and restoring its lost principles. Every other correction is either useless or a new evil. There is no justification for taking away individuals' freedom in the guise of public safety. Whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it and to institute new government. When the people are afraid of the government, that's tyranny. But when the government is afraid of the people, that's liberty. The issue today is the same as it has been throughout all history, whether man shall be allowed to govern himself or be ruled by a small elite. When you abandon freedom to achieve security, you lose both and deserve neither. A true patriot will defend his country from its government. I think myself that we have more machinery of government than is necessary. Too many parasites living on the labor of the industrious. Government, big enough to supply everything you need, is big enough to take everything you have. The course of history shows that as a government grows, liberty decreases. The two enemies of the people are criminals and government. So let us tie the second down with the chains of the Constitution, so the second will not become the legalized version of the first. And as always, thank you, Mr. Jefferson.
Thank you, ma'am. Kenny Works and Jem Morgane's on deck.
Kenny Works, Yucca, Arizona. I'm here today to address the future. What we do today determines what our future will be. That's the way it is every day. Unless the people, through unified action, arise and take charge of their government, they will find that their government has taken charge of them. Independence and liberty will be gone, and the general public will find itself in a condition of servitude to an aggregation of organized and selfish interest. This is what Calvin Coolidge said. When it is remembered that ignorance is the most fruitful source of poverty, vice, and crime, it is easy to realize the necessity for removing what is a menace, not only to our social well-being, but to the very existence of the Republic. If failure to meet this obligation registers a serious and inexcusable defect in our government. There used to be a song, Dinah Shore, Que sera, sera, the future's not ours to see. The future is ours to make. What we do today determines what our future will be tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Jem Morgane. Jennifer Esposito on deck.
Good morning. My name is Jem Morgan. I am a District 1 constituent. Today, I'm here to talk about the Mohave County elections website. I had made a request several meetings ago to have the website updated to reflect all of the open positions for public service that are open for election. And Alan Tempert did a fantastic job to update the elections website. And I want to show just a small graphic here. So you can't really read it and it says, oh, you can see it better than I thought it would be. So when you go to the elections website, there's actually two click places now. There's the partisan races, which are really the big focus, right? Everyone is focused on those partisan races, but all those other races, there's another tab on there. So the school boards, the water districts, the fire district, all of those are nonpartisan races. And now we have this lovely, lovely list of everything that is open across the county that everyone has access to. I know that many people believe that Mohave County is a Republican county. It's not. There are no partisan counties in Arizona. We are a one-party dominant county, which is not the same thing. But you know, we have a duty, all of us, to represent every constituent within Mohave County. And these nonpartisan races are so vital for the local governance and those smaller things. And so I'm not sure who all was involved in helping to make sure that that update was made, but I very much appreciate it. And so I want to say thank you to Mohave County, but also to Alan Tempert for just jumping right on top of it. In the middle of, that was with the whole redistricting, so he had a lot of stuff on his plate with that, but I very much appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Jennifer Esposito. Jeff Esposito on deck.
Good morning, Jennifer Esposito, Kingman. Now that it's out in the open that the state has ended the COVID emergency that statistically no one can prove ever existed, you don't have to take action, but I'm going to suggest that you come back next meeting with a resolution and have the county declare that the COVID emergency has ended. Not only that, I don't think that you should still be posting fraudulent statistics twice a month. I think you need to end posting the statistics altogether. All it does is create confusion and misinformation. I came to you last August and I read into the record and gave you a copy of the FDA document that showed that the PCR test never tested for the virus. So if you're only basing your statistics off a fraudulent test that everyone knows the emergency use authorization was rescinded on last year, you're using an unauthorized test that doesn't test for a virus and putting up statistics that are completely irrelevant, that are confusing the public. So I think that it's time that this county come back with a resolution in light of what the state has done, in light of the fact that you can't even collect any kind of reasonable, meaningful data, and just call this thing over. So once again, I'm going to quickly remind you of what I told you in August. This is directly from the government website. Quote, since no quantified virus isolates of the 2019 nCoV novel coronavirus SARS-CoV-2 were available for CDC use at the time the test was developed, and this study conducted assays designed for detection of the 2019 nCoV RNA were tested with characterized stocks of an in vitro transcribed full-length RNA spiked into a diluent consisting of human A549 cells and viral transport medium to mimic the clinical specimen. And what that means is that not only did they not have any, but they are only looking for what they call a lab primer. It's a pre-programmed range of genetic code ranging from 30 to 280 base pairs, but actual coronavirus has 30,000 base pairs. So the current test only looks for the snippets it wants, and the computer program fills in the blanks. The test is a joke. You guys have known this since August. You failed to take any action. You may not have to take any action. Oh, it's evolving. It's been evolving for a very long time, but the data has been out there. Moreover, the state has not published the deaths by all causes for 2021, and I can't find the actual number for 2020. If there was a real emergency, a real pandemic, you should be able to compare 2020 and 2021 to 2018 and 2019. You should expect to see a spike in deaths, but for some reason the state's hiding that information. So unless you can actually come to me and state at the next meeting how many people total died from all causes for 2020 and 2021, you haven't got a leg to stand on. Thank you very much. Have a nice day.
Thank you, ma'am. Jeff Esposito, Sharon Weber on deck.
Good morning, Mr. Esposito from Butler. Did you miss me? Spring is here and love is in the air. People want to be outside to enjoy themselves and each other, possibly gather in a park. Sadly, we have a county park that is one step away from being a desert. It is an embarrassment and a shame. That park is on the corner of Bank and Jagerson in Kingman. It is named Neil Butler Park. The land was donated by Grace Neal. She is rolling in her grave due to its condition. 1/4 of it is barren land. It has a pathetic dirt baseball field, a small fenced-in area that is called a dog park with little shade, but a lot of dirt. There are a few pavilions that are seldom used. Half of the trees are dead or dying. What fun it is to walk this 0.6-mile dirt track with no shade and horrible scenery. Wilma is responsible for this park. This park doesn't make money, so is it treated like the bastard stepchild? Thousands of your constituents live within 2 miles of this park. Another subject, the park's west side runs along Bank Street, which is the major north-south artery. Approximately 2 miles or less north is 2 miles of unimproved and unmaintained dirt. It has huge holes that can swallow an ATV. Emergency vehicles need to use this road. In order to traverse it, people have made go-arounds by cutting the fence on the west side. Who is responsible for this atrocity? This is negligence and malfeasance, which puts the public in danger. Ironically, it turns out to be both of you, Wilma and Travis, responsibility. A random address on Calle Alamo to the parks using Bank is only 4.9 miles with one turn. Using Stockton Hill is roughly 10 miles with 7 turns. That's not dangerous, is it? Wilma and Travis, you ought to be ashamed of yourselves. Yous have been here a long time, if not born here. Take care of this and stop pandering to other special interests and your friends and big money. Let's go, Brandon.
Thank you, sir. Sharon Weber.
I want to address this body. A little vertically challenged. I want to address this body today regarding the condition of public education in Arizona. As a rural community and county, strong public schools are the cornerstone of our local economy. Public schools not only provide a qualified workforce, they're also a driving issue in attracting new industry to our area. Most companies are going to bring their own management teams, and each member on that team is looking for quality of life services for their families in the area. It's a deciding factor. Mississippi and Alabama have legislatures that have passed pay increases and funding increases for teachers and schools because they see the value in retaining qualified teachers and maintaining strong schools. In this session, the Arizona legislature has passed bills through committee that would damage teacher retention and weaken our public schools. HB 2808 would pull struggling schools away from local control, which I thought was very important to people here, and place them in the hands and control of an outside, likely out-of-state, for-profit governing board. There would be no consideration for individual needs of families, communities, or parents. SB 1269 is a last-minute effort to completely overhaul school funding. It would cause district schools in rural areas to lose more funding. Most are already operating on a very thin margin. It's being rushed through and not properly vetted or discussed. There are many more, but no time to discuss them this morning. As a governing body in this community and this county, you, the county supervisors, have a responsibility, as do we, the citizens, to hold our state legislators accountable for public school funding. 95% of Arizona families choose public schools for their children's education. These schools should be funded, and it's the legislature's constitutional responsibility to fund them. I have a graphic here, as you see. This graphic is from the Arizona Education Association. It is a report card from 2018 through 2020 on how our senator and representatives for this area, this legislative area, have supported funding our public schools. As you can see, it is not stellar.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much. Yes, I am.
Mr. Attorney, does the Board of Supervisors have any authority over public education funding?
Mr. Chair, no.
Thank you, sir. The call to the public is supposed to be over things that the board has authority over, not a political smear by a teachers union. Thank you. We're going to go to item 73 first. Ryan Esplin.
Thank you. We're asking the board to make a motion to authorize county staff to clear the Nogales right-of-way up in the Virgin Acres area of Mohave County.
Chairman,
Questions? Supervisor Lingenfelter.
I'd actually like to make a motion to authorize staff to clear the Nogales right-of-way.
Second.
You've heard that motion and second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The ayes appear to have it, do have it, so ordered. Thank you, sir.
It's good to see everyone. Thank you.
Consent agenda. The following items listed under the consent agenda will be considered as a group and acted upon by one motion with no separate discussion of said items unless a board member so requests. In that event, the item will be removed from the consent agenda for separate discussion and action.
Chairman Gold, we have a proclamation ahead of that.
I starred that and I still blew right past it. Okay, we've got a proclamation to approve the adoption of a proclamation to declare the week of April 4th through the 10th, 2022 as National Public Health Week 2022 in Mohave County, Arizona, with the theme Public Health is Where You Are. Denise, do you have anything to say about this?
Chairman Gould, members of the board, yes, we haven't had an opportunity really to celebrate this the last couple of years, but you know, there's a lot of people that work behind the scenes and out very visibly out in the public for that matter, performing a lot of responsibilities around public health that deserves some acclaim, if you will, and recognition for what they do. And some of those jobs are very, very difficult. They're regulatory in nature. If you look at our EH division, in our nursing division, we do a lot of work around immunizations, of course, but also sexually transmitted infection prevention work and trying to prevent the spread of disease in that area. Within our prevention area, we've got nutrition education, tobacco prevention, our prescription drug overdose prevention program. We have a lot of programs really out there working with different groups to try to prevent and improve the health outcomes of our community. So I just wanted to thank them all for what they do and wanted to recognize them through the proclamation.
Thank you, ma'am. What's the pleasure of the board?
Chairman Gold,
Supervisor Bishop.
I will make a motion that we approve the adoption of this proclamation, and I want to thank all the members of the health department for everything they've done over the last several years.
You've heard that motion in second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The ayes appear to have it, do have it, so ordered. Now consent agenda. Supervisor Bishop, do you have anything you'd like to remove?
47.
47?
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am. Supervisor Johnson.
Nothing, Mr. Chair.
Supervisor Lingenfelter.
24, thank you.
24. Supervisor Angus.
9, 11, and 46.
Was that 9,
Yes.
11,
Yes.
and 46? Thank you, Supervisor.
Chairman Gould.
Supervisor Lingenfelter.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda minus items 9, 11, 24, and 47.
I think, and 46 also.
46 and 47, excuse me.
Second.
You've heard that motion in second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The ayes appear to have it, do have it, so ordered. Item 9, Supervisor Angus.
Thank you. There's a bit of a feedback here, so
going to be speaking slowly. So I was asked by a constituent to take this out, and I believe she's there in the audience. I hope she signed up to speak.
Artie?
Chris Rodarty, Kingman. I am opposed to item 9. Every dollar the government takes from me to contribute to their charity, that mostly goes to administration, is one less dollar I have to contribute to a charity I believe is more worthy. Imagine you have a friend named George. One day you and George are approached by an old mutual friend, Oliver. Oliver explains he's had bad luck and he's raising money to cover tuition fees for his children. You want to help Oliver out, so you give him some money. And to your surprise, George doesn't offer Oliver any help. You try to persuade him, but it's no use. Imagining yourself in this situation, do you think it's okay to use the threat of physical force against George to get him to do the right thing? Now, this time, imagine a group of your friends take a vote, and the majority are in favor of threatening George to force him to help Oliver. Does this democratic process make it okay to threaten George? And one last scenario. This time, imagine many thousands of people have democratically agreed that a group, who we will call agents, shall do whatever is necessary to take money from George and give it to Oliver's family. The agents don't explicitly threaten George at first. All they do is send him a bill. Like everyone else, though, George knows what will happen if he doesn't pay the bill. First, he'll get more letters demanding payment as the bill grows larger. Eventually, if he still doesn't pay, agents with guns will break into his house and take him away against his will. Almost everyone pays their taxes without protest. We know the agents are prepared to use any force necessary to overpower us if we resist. Do you think it's acceptable for the agents to threaten violence against George if he doesn't give his money toward Oliver and helping his family? If we approve the state programs that redistribute wealth or compel service, we must also approve of threats of violence made against peaceful individuals, because this is how the funds are collected or the service compelled. On the other hand, most of us feel uncomfortable threatening peaceful people when we imagine having to make the threats ourselves. If we feel negatively toward the idea of threatening others personally, can we really be comfortable with threats made against them by agents of the state on our behalf? Some people, including me, believe that voluntary interaction and spontaneous order are realistic and preferable alternatives to state coercion as a way of organizing society. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Denise, you want to come up and tell us what you're planning to do with the money?
Chairman Gould, members of the board, the funding for this program is critical, actually, because this identifies developmental issues within children early on through home visiting programs to ensure that we get referrals to other agencies and other services early in an infant's development process so that we can ensure better health outcomes for those children. So there, as you can see from some of the backup, they do physical, developmental, psychosocial, and environmental assessments. And they do these through these home visiting programs. And as a result, we get families connected to these resources very early on, and then they get the care that they need. And again, we get better health outcomes for those families, those infants as a result.
Questions for Denise? Supervisor Angus, have any questions?
Chairman Gould.
Supervisor Bishop.
I'll make a motion that we approve contract amendment number 3 for contract CTR 046263.
Second. You've heard that motion in second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay, and I vote no. You guys appear to have it. You haven't, so ordered. Item 11, Supervisor Angus.
Gould, Supervisor Angus, our goal with this, with these funds is to incorporate that into our mental health efforts in the community. As you know, we had some other funding come down the pike that will allow us to hire somebody that can help us with these efforts, as we don't receive any other funding for mental health. And so we'd like to contribute in our way through these resources to try to improve the mental health of our residents.
Don't you think that instead of starting a new, administrative funding source and a new person with all the benefits and all the money that goes with that, but that money would be better served giving it to nonprofits who are already doing that, who have the expertise, who have the, you don't have to start from scratch. Pet peeve I have that government keeps taking on these responsibilities when there are nonprofits, agencies already doing it. So I'm going to ask, this money that comes from medical marijuana, is there anything in the contract that would allow it to be given to an agency, like a bid to bid for it, instead of taking all of this back into the government?
Supervisor Angus, I need to look through the language to see if subcontracting is allowed through this funding source. So I'd need to do more homework on that. And please keep in mind, when we talk about new initiatives, we're really contributing to already existing initiatives out in the community. We're not interested in just working in a silo. We don't operate in silos in any of our other business. So we would be looking at how we could use those resources in contribution to other groups and their work anyway.
Give me an example.
Resource team, for example, that's a community-based group. There may be efforts on their part and activities that they're planning that we could use some of these resources for. We'd love to expand and go back to our efforts prior to the pandemic of using the mental health first aid and doing more promotion and training around that particular topic. But we don't have anybody necessarily to spearhead that. Most of our grants are very specific in their deliverables and don't allow other staff to work on these initiatives. So I have actually been, along with the MHRT team, taken this on as a goal really for us to continue to expand our efforts to promote this out in the community and try to really work on mental health issues.
This is one of my biggest problems now as we sort of segue onto a new program that we're doing, which is called Reach Out, that there are so many agencies, governments, nonprofits that are basically doing the same thing. And we've got to streamline that. So you say that the county has someone on staff, you hired somebody, or are you taking this money to hire somebody?
So we do actually have money from a different source that allows us to hire somebody, but we have been unable to find somebody at this point. The recruitment process has not moved forward. So again, we don't spend money where we don't have, a resource there. And we also use that money as wisely as possible, of course, to move forward with initiatives that would benefit the entire community.
And I know it's a hard ask, but is it at all possible to track the success of these programs?
Supervisor Angus, and I would love to see progress and be able to measure progress in that sense, whether or not, we can track the number of mental health first aid trainings that occur and how many people are trained, how many classes are conducted, how many people receive that. But, beyond that, really, you have to look at the overall studies and BRFSS data that come down the pike that talk about how the public responds to questions about mental health and what they're perceiving as issues in our community, and mental health is one of those. I think we've also seen a lot of that out in the community, but measurement is incredibly difficult. But we continue to strive to find ways to do that.
As more and more money comes in for these kinds of things, and, we're looking at a lot of things happening, opioid settlements, things like that, I think we need to be more proactive in making sure that this is being used and is getting down to really the people who need it. It's just, I've been doing this for 10 years, and all I see are worse outcomes and more government. That's just the bottom line. More people being hired, more money being thrown at it. Just like the lady was saying about education, just throwing money at things doesn't necessarily, make it good. So I would, as we go on, I would like to maybe work with you and get together some kind of mental health consortium, which I believe they're already out there, and see what everyone's doing and make sure that all the money that's being spent is being spent wisely.
Yes, you're more than welcome to attend any of the mental health resource team meetings. That is a county-wide group that addresses mental health in our community, and they're a conglomerate of many different agencies and organizations and people that join forces really to try to accomplish just that. So you're welcome to attend those meetings, and you and I absolutely can certainly meet on that as well.
Okay, well, with that, begrudgingly, I'll make a motion to approve item 11.
Chairman Gold. Denise, do we have any providers that are in the rural communities for mental health first aid or education or?
Supervisor Bishop, are you referring to, say, Dolan Springs, Meadview, and some of the more rural communities?
Yeah, Wickiup, Yucca, Golden Shores.
I'm not aware of any specific providers that operate out of offices in those areas. They may provide services, but I would imagine that most people have to come and travel to Kingman, Lake Havasu City, and Bullhead City for those services.
So will this, if approved, will this be available through the new health wellness van that will be coming soon to Mohave County?
Love to find a tie to figure out how to do that, yes.
Okay. Okay, and I have attended several of your mental health workshops and meetings, and I know the need is great, and I know that we have a program, a reach out program that'll be in addition to the Mohave County Jail. So will this help in that situation where we're, rather than incarcerating mental health patients, we're putting them into our new reach out program?
Chairman Gould, Supervisor Bishop, I'm not as familiar with the Reach Out program and how this money and how these activities can interact. So I'd need to learn a little bit more about Reach Out before I can provide an answer to you.
Okay, and mental health, is that a problem in Mohave County?
Yes.
More so than the other 14 counties?
I think you're seeing it statewide and nationwide. So I don't know that our issues are any larger or smaller, but they're definitely larger than they were a couple of years ago. I think we're seeing some increases in mental health issues and problems and crisis and things that public health can play a role in, as well as all the organizations out in the community.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Certainly.
Supervisor Lingenfelter.
Thank you, Chairman Gould. I would agree with everybody. The mental health services being provided are very important. Over the years, I've read several articles, and in my research, just it seems to be that there's a trend that when it comes to some of these services that are offered, you see better outcomes, perhaps some increased efficiencies when you're contracting out with either private or the nonprofit sector. And that's not an affront to any of you in the public health side with the county. It's just what I've read and what I think the data has shown, that when you compare public service delivery to the private and the nonprofit service delivery, you get increased efficiencies perhaps and some better outcomes. I'm sure that if you're in a private industry and you're trying to get these funds, grants and other things to continue your operations, you're going to be able to have benchmarks to show that you're providing value so that you can continue to win those grants. So I would also be in favor of, if there's any way possible, to take these monies that are being allocated to the county to perhaps contract out with either the private sector or nonprofit sector to see the provision of those services within our rural communities. Thank you.
Supervisor Lingenfelter and members of the board, I also want to make sure you understand too that these are just one-time funds as well. These will not be funneled in any way. These will not be continued. So this is just a one-time piece.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
So Denise, this is so $73,000 is what all we're getting from the state for the legalization of marijuana for recreational use in the great state of Arizona?
There are also, Chairman Gould, there are other resources that we are getting financial through this tax. Twice a year, there are contributions to an account basically for public health activities. And this, however, was just a one-time dedicated amount that came through ADHS for this medical marijuana tax. And they've told us not to expect any additional funds through this piece of it.
Thank you.
Certainly.
Attorney Palmer, do we know if there is any limits on what we can spend this money on, and can we supplant existing county spending?
Mr. Chair, I am not aware of the requirements. I'm happy to look into this grant and report back.
Thank you. Any further
Chairman
questions?
Gould,
Supervisor Angus.
would you be more, do you want me to bring this back instead so they can answer the questions you just had? Instead of approving today, just continue it for our next meeting?
I prefer that it be continued.
Okay, then I will retract my motion and I will state a new one to continue this item until our May meet, April, what is it, Jenny, the next meeting?
Supervisor Angus, it's April 18th.
Yeah, until our April 18th meeting.
I'll second.
You've heard that motion and second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay.
Nay.
The ayes appear to have it. Do have it. So ordered. Number 24, Supervisor Lingenfelter.
Thank you, Chairman Gould. Really just one question. I think it's more, I see Tara coming up. It might be more to Steve from Public Works, but the only question is, I know we've had a little bit of dialogue on our JOC maximum jobs, the maximum job, the cap on the maximum jobs, and hopefully keeping those at a minimum so that our local county folks would be able to bid on the jobs that are larger than that. And I just wanted to know what the job size was on this job contract.
Okay, so Supervisor Linkenfelter, Chairman Gold, I think just as a quick summary as the reason that we're using a cooperative jock for this purpose, I want to say for about the last 10 years, the county has actually done an extensive RFP for approved surface treatment. We just did not have capacity to go through the RFP process this year to replace that contract. So this, I believe, is a stopgap measure to continue to provide those services until we can go out to bid for our own contract. But I'll let Director Latosky speak to the actual identified projects.
Director Latosky.
Good morning, Chairman Gould, members of the board, Supervisor Linkenfelter, great question. Yes, some 5 years ago, the county actually did what I call a smart request for proposals, where unlike an IFB, we went out to the contractors and solicited from them pavement surface treatment products that provide for a structural capacity when they're applied, that they would propose to us and demonstrate that they satisfy a certain specification, that we would select them based on quality and performance. So we did that. And we've really found that there's one cost-effective treatment, rubberized chip seal, that Cactus Asphalt has applied for us in the past. Now, the contractor responses we received from the county solicitation did not include any local contractors. And just by tough coincidence, this contract actually expired in late February. And as a result, we'd still like to do for our heavy maintenance program this spring another 4 miles of the rubberized chip seal, which Cactus Asphalt has really perfected really nicely for us. But we have every intention on doing another Mohave County-based jock solicitation next fall.
Great. I appreciate your...
And to clarify, I'm sorry, you asked one question, Supervisor Linkenfelter. It's going to be about 4 miles of work. We're doing the half mile of Aztec Road just west of State Road 95 that goes to the crossing into the reservation, as well as another 3 miles, 3.5 miles of El Rodeo Road that leads out to the landfill.
Great. Yeah, I appreciate it. I think that the jocks are a great tool to have in your back pocket. But as was talked about before, and it sounds like you're aware of it, that just maximizing to the extent practicable and possible the opportunities for our local contracting trades. So thank you. With that, I would make a motion to approve if there weren't any other questions.
Second. You've heard that motion and second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say nay. The ayes appear to have it. Do have it. So ordered. Item 46. Supervisor Angus.
Yes, again, like the first one, I believe there's someone signed up to speak to it.
Chris Rodarty.
Chris Rodarty, Kingman. I stand here in opposition to item 46. This item endorses a Mohave County application for $15 million in a federal RAISE grant for road improvements. For those who don't know, the acronym RAISE stands for Rebuilding American Infrastructure with Sustainability and Equity. First, I must point out that I am not against road improvements and better highways. I am, however, opposed to this proposal. Simply reading Mohave County's carefully worded request reveals the extent to which our own Public Works Department has gone to mirror the socialist language found on the National Transportation Department website. In part, the resolution states Mohave County will comply with all RAISE grant requirements set forth in the bipartisan infrastructure law. What exactly are those requirements? Well, you'll find them in the 71-page NOFO, which is a Notice of Funding Opportunity for RAISE grants on the DOT website. It states in part that, quote, projects that have not sufficiently considered racial equity in their planning as determined by the DOT will be required to do so before receiving funds for construction, end quote. The mirrored language in the county request is more than disturbing. For example, under innovation, the benefits of the project include, and I quote, deploying technologies and other practices that drive safety, equity, climate, and resilience. And as a side note, it's interesting under the section project schedule, the county is quick to point out that, quote, project completion should occur by December 31st, 2024, and within the current Biden-Harris administration. Has this board asked itself, by signing off on item 46, are we truly serving the citizens of Mohave County, or are we agreeing to yet more intrusive, unconstitutional violations? Sadly, I believe you are going to approve this request for federal handouts. Acceptance of this $15 million plunges Mohave County even deeper into the socialist pit. You may roll your eyes as I speak, but remember when you took office, you swore to uphold the constitutions of Arizona and the United States of America. Cozying up to the tyrannical teat for a few shekels of blood money is, at best, unconstitutional and at worst, fatal to our republic. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Supervisor Johnson.
I have a question, Mr. Berardi. You don't want us to take grant money to build roads? Where would that money come from for the roads?
Not this one. If you have read this proposal on the DOT website and the county proposal, you'll see this is, what are we getting into? What are we going to have to step up and do? We're going to have to meet their requirements for racial equity in our roads as determined by the DOT. What is that? I'm not against road improvements, but not this. This is evil.
So we should put a tax out.
Take some time and read it.
We should put a tax out to get the $15 million to pave those roads?
There's got to be a different way to do it. This isn't the way.
Thank you.
Chairman Gould.
Supervisor Bishop. It's a tie, but.
Thank you, Chairman Gold. And I just want to remind everybody that this intersection is the gateway to Grand Canyon West, to the Lake Mead National Recreation Area, South Cove. It's the most dangerous intersection in Mohave County. This is an opportunity to help the residents that live in Dolan Springs and Meadview be able to traverse the area in a safer manner. And you know, the traffic accidents at this intersection over the last 5 years, 10 years have just really increased since Grand Canyon West has been bringing in what they claim to be 1 million tourists a year into the newest wonder of Arizona. And it's necessary that we have this intersection. It's going to tie in with Interstate 11 in the future. There is just a million reasons to approve the application of this grant, and I applaud Steve Lukowski for putting all the work in to write the grant, and I hope we get it. Thank you.
Supervisor Angus.
Thank you. Is Steve up there? Steve Lukowski? Steve? I can't hear anything.
Good morning, Supervisor Angus. Steve Latoski.
Okay. Hi, Steve. Over the years, have you noticed the language change in these grants and programs contractually?
That's a good question. And as I have seen it, especially under this administration, I have seen, I'll call it the promotion of consideration of socioeconomics in highway planning and construction. And what I refer to that as being the opportunity for access to new transportation improvements, whether highway or transit, that service areas of economic need, as well as areas of diversity. So it's primarily more establishing projects that service a broader economic, socioeconomic base as what may have been done, or at least perceived to have been done previously. The way this particular grant unfolds, and this is really the highest level of federal funds that can be pursued. We would be competing literally with New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, virtually everyone for $1.5 billion. It is truly a competitive process. We think we got a heck of an opportunity here with this proposal, but there will be, to our understanding, no specific responsibilities of the county to comply with anything out of the ordinary, with the exception of that contracting would follow, for example, civil rights and equal opportunity employment laws. And of course, environmental clearance would still, delve into complying with NEPA, and that would be the extent of it. But with all due respect to the board, and especially what we've heard, you just have to answer these applications, or provide an application that answers the questions of the grant. It's just like in private practice. You have to give, the entity for which you're trying to propose to win a job exactly what they're asking for. So we expect it out of contractors that propose on county jobs to answer what we're asking for, and in this case, we're required to answer exactly what the grant is. Otherwise, it just won't get awarded. I've done too many of these.
Have you ever been held accountable for something like let's say climate change? I don't even know what climate would do with this, what it has to do with it, but other than the obvious civil rights and things like that, that I believe has been in every contract basically since I've been in office, but they seem to be putting in these words. Do you see any change in reporting and what you're accountable to doing?
And Gould Supervisor Angus, that's a great question. And typically we see any changes that would come about through the intergovernmental agreements as Arizona Department of Transportation would administer this grant, for example. And I have seen nothing, no special requirements, with the exception of the usual federal requirements. If you have federal dollars, then there's usually a stipulation that you can't, I think in the past, and believe me, I'm green on procurement, but it's something about you can't use services based in Sudan or Iran, those common federal requirements. But I have seen no special requirements, either in the short term or the long term, related to environmental practices or social equity type practices.
So you consider this contract to be much like other contracts?
Supervisor Angus, I absolutely do. The fact that the concept of social equity or racial diversity comes up in one of the application criteria really just signals it's just merely a potential criteria of consideration. And in this instance, our application actually meets a certain criteria. It actually serves what's called a federal opportunity zone, and that speaks to the socioeconomics of the Dolan Springs area. So we actually have a leg to stand on here with regard to that social equity type consideration in this grant award.
Okay, so early on you talked about that this, or I think Supervisor Bishop talked about this goes up to the Grand Canyon West. Is the Wallapai tribe helping in any way with the funding for this?
Supervisor Angus, the Tribal Council has given us a letter of recommendation. So far, neither the tribe or ADOT has entertained, nor have we requested from them a contribution. We're suggesting an 8% match to the $15 million, or about $1.35 million, but that could possibly be worked out at a later time.
Well, I know that this is important. It should have been fixed a long time ago, as many of the roads and byways in Mohave County. So, so where we are today. So, thank you for answering.
Further questions for Mr. Letoski? Supervisor Bishop.
Chairman Gold, I make a motion that we approve and adopt resolution number 2022-045.
Second.
Jean Morgaine, did you want to speak to this? I do. Come on up and speak. Normally we make you fill the form out in advance, but I'm making an exception.
Thank you, Supervisor. I would have, what I want to speak to is in response to Chris Rodarty's comment, which I think is really important when people are involved in these, and her comments, I think, are very important to address. The issue, she was not sure what the racial equity considerations are, and so she has concerns about that. So when it comes to these types of fundings, particularly in urban areas, very oftentimes federal funding is used in a way to build infrastructure that circumvents certain minority areas. So this is why racial considerations, the racial equity. So if federal funds are being used that bypass, neighborhoods, minority neighborhoods, that's not a good thing. The federal funding needs to be fair and equitable for all of the community. I think in this case with Supervisor Angus and Supervisor Bishop both point out that this is absolutely going to assist the Grand Canyon West. The tribe is a racial consideration. Here in Mohave County, they're probably our most dominant racial consideration, the tribe. So in this case, without having, specific information about that criteria, it seems that it's very likely that it would be a very positive racial equity consideration to approve the funding, that it would meet that. But I do think that it's an important question. What does, the racial equity mean? Because we need to have those conversations because they're not openly talked about. So that is my addition. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Mr. Chairman.
County Manager.
If I may, and not to take sides here, but I'd really like to chime in with your permission.
Sure.
As you know, I am an engineer by training, done it for over 30 years. It was all in transportation and served as the state engineer with ADOT for over 3 years. And so to that end, my comments come from my background and my experience in that field. The facts are this intersection is in need of safety improvements. There has been documented accidents as the traffic volume increased, as US 93 was improved to a 4-lane divided highway, and it is the future of I-11 as more and more international traffic comes through Las Vegas to the Grand Canyon West. Accidents have occurred at this intersection and they're documented, and one can assume that they will continue to. This intersection improvements would serve the public at large and would serve Dolan Springs, the Lake Mead recreational area, and the Grand Canyon West, as mentioned already, which draws, which drew 1 million visitors in the era prior to, or in the period prior to the pandemic, the COVID-19. Furthermore, ever since the EPA was created in the 70s, and that every transportation project needs to have an environmental document, either an environmental impact statement, environmental assessment, or categorical exclusion, those environmental justice and equity and so on have been embedded in that process. We've delivered many projects with those in hand. In the years I served and worked at ADOT, whether it was working on US 93, loops around the valley, or other corridors, we applied for grants under all different administrations. And once the grant, if the grant was approved, once it was approved, we proceeded with designing and building a transportation project, as we always have. Usually those references are included in the environmental planning process, but when it comes to design and construction, as you heard from Steve Lutowski, the Public Works Director, short of just saying contractor X or designer Y cannot discriminate against one nation or the other because that's in the federal or state statutes. It doesn't go beyond that. So I would end with this. This intersection was reviewed by ADOT as well as the county. There's a report on hand. It is truly, for safety reasons, it is needed. And I would leave it in your good judgment and capable hand to decide, but I wanted to share those thoughts with you.
Thank you, sir. This is one of the issues that annoys me about the way that the federal government behaves. They have a gas tax, they take the money to Washington, and then they decide how they're going to dole the money back out. They completed the interstate highway system back in the 50s. They should have abandoned their tax, let the states pass a tax to maintain the interstate highways inside of their states. They throw in garbage like this, which is another buzzword. It's similar to the buzzword issue that we had at the last meeting. These buzzwords seem to make their way into the requirements of the contract. But really, I think Arizona can decide better how the roads in Arizona should be maintained rather than us to go as beggars to Washington and try to beg for our own tax dollars back. A congressman once told me that with shekels come shackles. And this is essentially what happens is the federal government decides how do they want to string this up, and which congressman or senator has the most clout where that money gets spent. If the money comes out of Arizona, it should go back into Arizona. It shouldn't be diverted to other projects. That we need to press Congress to do that. It would streamline the entire process because now the money goes to Washington, it comes back to ADOT or the county does the project. There's no reason for Washington to be even involved in the process other than so they can throw their strings in on the process. But I believe we have a motion and a second. You've heard that motion. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The ayes appear to have it. Do have it. So ordered. Item 47, Supervisor Bishop.
Thank you, Chairman Gold. I pulled this item because I just wanted to make sure that that we all understand that this amount that is being offered for this property is 50% of the appraised value. And I believe that's important because maybe our attorney can refresh our memory, but I believe we have to take at least appraised value or have approval from the majority or supermajority of the board. Can I get the county attorney to explain?
Mr. Chair, Supervisor Bishop, I am actually not aware of the 50%. I apologize. I know one of my coworkers who's probably upstairs watching this right now that does oversee Public Works. So I don't know how the board wants to move forward, whether that's a request to continue this item till later in the meeting or to a later meeting in order to get that information to the supervisor.
Okay, thank you. County Manager, do you know? Or,
Mr. Chairman,
Lutowski looks like he has the
Mr.
answer.
Chairman, Supervisor Bishop, Steve is standing, and I will let him proceed, and if there's anything else I can add, I'll jump in. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Steve.
Yes, Chairman Gould, Supervisor Bishop, I'll have to paraphrase, but as previously directed by the board, we are processing this abandonment in accordance with state statute Title 28, 7201 through 7215. It's the abandonment of state highways. And it only sets forth in one particular provision that the board may consider compensation or consideration, as I believe it's stated in state statute, for any abandonment, but it does not set any threshold. So it's in the board's own judgment in terms of what they feel is fair consideration for this right-of-way abandonment. And yes, the applicant is offering only 50% for what is a piece of right-of-way adjacent Lynn Drive, about 0.055 acres.
Okay, and do you have a recommendation to the board?
Staff will from time to time take liberty of a motion to deny, but we still stuck with the motion to approve. There has been abandonments of the same area of right-of-way in 2015 all the way through 2020. So there has been a consistency by which all the adjacent property owners have been petitioning for right-of-way abandonment. It still leaves Lynn Drive, which is actually behind the Supervisor Gould's current offices off of State Route 95. It still leaves Lynn Drive with 60 feet. So we really have no objection as staff to the abandonment leaving Lynn Drive at 60 feet. But I don't really, I'm fairly neutral in terms of the actual acceptance of the 50%.
Do you know what the other residents paid for their abandonment was?
Supervisor Bishop, I'm sorry, I did not bring that information with me. Also, if the board were to choose to deny, the applicant could bring this back as, I believe, after 6 months as a new petition.
Okay, I would be interested in knowing what the other property owners paid for their abandonment, because if they paid the full appraised value and this property owner gets it at 50%, I don't see the fairness in that, so.
Get that information.
Mr. Chair.
Supervisor Johnson.
I have a question for Mr. Palmer there. If there is nothing in the statutes that talks about right-of-ways, we still have county-owned assets. If we can't sell for less than a certain percentage of their value, wouldn't that cover right-of-ways? That is a county asset and is a property.
Mr. Chair, Supervisor Johnson, there is a statute on selling or disposing of county assets, yes. In the variety of statutes, there's different processes depending on the asset and how the county has ownership of it. And so on this one, again, I'm not familiar with the assets here along this roadway. I have been checking, as kind of getting back to Supervisor Bishop's question. I've looked through these statutes on abandoning, selling, or disposing of a roadway. There's nothing on percentages, but that this board does have authority to dispose of roadways.
Continue.
Chairman Gould, yes, I'd like to make a motion that we continue this until the next board meeting so that those questions can be answered.
Second.
You've heard that motion and second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say nay. The ayes appear to have it. Do have it. So ordered. Item 65. I'm going to open the public hearing on item 65. Is anybody here to testify on item 65? Seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing on item 65. What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman,
Supervisor Leinfelder.
I'd like to make a motion to approve BOS resolution number 2022-054.
Second.
You've heard that motion and second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say nay.
Nay.
The ayes appear to have it. Do have it. So ordered. Item 66. I'm going to open the public hearing on item 66. And we've got a couple of people that want to speak to that. John Searcy. And Richard Holmes is on deck.
I How you doing, sir? My name's John Searcy. I'm from Dolan Springs. Thank you for the vote on 46, by the way. We need that overpass out there. Yeah. I'm just here. Last time, my friend that was applying for the flagpole on his property to change his zoning was denied. He had a neighbor complain. So I'm just here to state that he is a good upstanding member. He needs the flagpole in order to separate his property so that he can have living space in the back. I believe he's bringing in his sister and stuff. His father passed away up to the front property. So that's the reason he's wanting to separate it. You have to have a flagpole in order to get to the rear of the property. There are some other members from Dolan Springs here from the VFW to speak on his behalf in case you guys were deciding to deny it. Maybe that's about it. I didn't have much to say, just that.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome, sir. Thank you for hearing me.
Richard Holmes.
Good morning, board members. My name is Richard Holmes. I am the commander of the American Legion Post 88 in Dolan Springs, Arizona. I am here as a character witness for Justin Cospain. He sends his apologies for not being here. His father passed away a few days ago and is in Hawaii laying him to rest. I have known Justin for well over 10 years. 5 of them, we worked together at Great Canyon West. I've been over to Justin's home and property numerous times over the years and always found it to be in above average condition. Justin is a member and an asset to our post, the veterans, and the community of Dolan Springs. And I am here today to ask this board to find in favor of Justin Cospain. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else here to testify on item 66? I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing. What's the pleasure of the board?
Chairman Gold, I'll make a motion to approve.
Second. You've heard that motion and second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Those opposed say nay. You guys appear to have it. You have it, so ordered. I'm going to open the public hearing on item 67. I've got a few people that would like to speak to that item. Kenny Works.
Good morning, Chairman Gold, members of the board. I'm here to speak on behalf of the applicant.
Do you want to speak first or last?
Do I get a chance for a rebuttal? Or would you like me to? I'm happy to do it.
Why don't we have you come in after the members of the public have spoken? That way you can do any rebutting if you need to rebut.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Kenny Works.
Kenny Works, Yucca, Arizona. My concern is how there has to be limits. Where are we going to set these limits? I think that's why we have a planning and zoning commission, is to set limits on how much acreage we're going to allow for this sort of thing or that sort of thing. I know if we cover square miles with solar panels and windmills, those are square miles that don't need water. Should water be adjudicated, it ain't going to happen with the courts. They're going to say, why do you need the water? Those acres are all covered with solar panels and windmills. I think we should move the solar panels and windmills down to Maricopa County and cover their buildable property with windmills and solar panels so we can build on ours and use the water that we're allocated for here to supply our residents and our buildable properties here. I think there needs to be more of a discussion on what the limits are going to be when it comes to how much acreage we're going to cover with this sort of thing. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Annette Young. And Sam Coleman is on deck.
Good morning. We have a piece of property directly to the west of the proposed solar fields. And when we bought it because Golden Valley, we actually live in Havasu, and we bought this piece of property because we love the desert. It's peace and quiet out there. It's just very rural, and it's a nice place. And most of the people, I'm guessing, that purchased anything in Golden Valley that live there or have property there, they've done it for the same reason. The quiet, there's not the stores. We can go to Kingman, we can go to Laughlin for all of that. I don't think we need, in fact, I know we don't need a solar field being developed there. I was told by Mr. Fromm to drive by after our last meeting, to drive by the Joy Lake project in Mohave Valley. And my husband and I drove over there. Now I have a picture here, and I hope it's not upside down.
You can flip it if it is.
Okay. Okay. That it? Okay. This is a picture of Joy Lane, which I was told that if I take a look at that particular solar field, that this project is largely invisible. I don't think that's invisible. That looks like a concentration camp. All of the bushes that were underneath these solar fields are dead. That is a fire hazard to me. There's also another picture I have right here. And at the circle up here, it's hard to see, but I put my phone through the gate, and this is off Joy Lane. You can't see right here, but there are 2 power stations right there. I was probably a football field, maybe 2 fields away in distance from this at the gate. I could hear them buzzing. Now, they had to notify everyone 300 feet, within 300 feet of the proposed project. And if I could hear that from that distance, we're going to hear it on our property. Along with that, there's also these very big power poles that are within the fenced area that are an eyesore. And I've got another one. To the east of this project, this is what the east side looks like. It's where people are dumping palm fronds and landscaping material. There are beer bottles. There are blankets up there where the kids are going to party. The east side of that property is trash. And it's terrible. Now, the concerns of the trash, the fire hazard of what's underneath these solar fields, it's ugly. I'm sorry, may I still speak? Thank you. We didn't purchase this to have a project like that go up that we would look at if we develop that. Now we're in question of developing it because that's the last thing I want to look at. I was also told that from Mr. Fromm that because there is a active wash that flows through the property and in front of our property, as well as there are 2 gas lines that go through this 600 acres that require 60-foot easements for the gas lines. I have to ask, why is this property in question to be built on if there are so many obstacles with gas lines and a water, wash flow incident that seems like to me it's going to be a huge chunk of that property that is unusable. Why do they want it? I just don't feel like this is fair to any of us who have purchased there in good heart to purchase land there. To have something like this. I know nobody wants to see that outside their door. There's so much desert that this project can go somewhere else, not next to where people want to live in quiet. It's just not fair, And I think that was all. I mean, we weren't aware of any of this. When we purchased this property, we were not aware. The salesperson never mentioned any of this. Perhaps we were deceived by them years ago. I don't know. But I hope you please take into consideration that if they are awarded this, what we did pay for our property, we might as well just burn that money because we're never going to see it. Nobody will ever buy what we purchased because we are directly across the street. And because those are dirt roads that flow around this property, it's not that wide. It's a single car road that divides our property from that. So we would literally be looking at that right outside in front of our eyes. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, ma'am. Sam Colmone.
Good morning. We are here today on behalf of approximately 9,000 residents and landowners in Golden Valley who have not been notified for this project, who will be directly or indirectly affected for the dust, extra heat, or the reflective sunlight that will be created by this project. That will have rotating panels. Due to the reflective sunlight that will travel a great distance well beyond the 300 feet notice area, we would like to request that an extension of this approval or disapproval be extended so to notify all of the residents that will be directly or indirectly affected by the reflected sunlight. How will this industrial complex affect residents' property values? We also would like to request the county do an investigation of the industrial complex in the middle of 3 residential units for the health and safety of the residents and their land. How will dust and reflecting sunlight impact the residents of Golden Valley? Physical health, traffic safety, livestock, wild animals, flood waters moving in and off the project. More time should be taken to address this project in a residential area. I would just like to note that the green sections are the sections that have been purchased or the one that's being asked to be rezoned today, and that all of these orange sections are residential sections. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Michael Adams.
Good morning. I wasn't going to speak today. I just came over to look at this. I have made offers on properties up there, and I was made aware doing my due diligence about this solar plant and things going in. During this investigation that I've been doing before buying the property, I'm finding out, I've seen a picture of it, they're wanting to use shipping canisters to hold their equipment in. The solar panels themselves are supposed to be on trailers. So if you rezone this, let them come in and do all of that, and I don't even own the property yet, and then they decide, well, we don't want to do this or it's going under, they're going to leave all their stuff on trailers or in sealant canisters or just pull it all out overnight, and you're left with a rezoned piece of property. Then now you have to come back here and do this again to rezone it to try to sell it and use it. No one is telling me any different. And I've done as much investigation as I can about this. There's not a lot of information out. They put out 2 little paper signs out there to say that we're having the meeting today. I've had to make phone calls. Thankfully, I'm retired and I can do that. And I drove over here from California just for this. I see now that on here that someone has voted it down already. 3, or I think it's 3 to 5 or something like that. So my thing is I'm going to cancel the sale. I actually put it on hold for this unless someone tells me today that this is not going to go through, now or in the future. But if it was more permanent and they did more studies, because you have a whole environment out there that's beautiful that you're going to destroy. just because you want to rezone it and put in something that's not even going to be permanent at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Jim Morgan. Oh, wrong one. Never mind. Mr. Fromm.
Mr. Chairman, Supervisors, thank you. What I would like to do is maybe very briefly go through what we are proposing, and then I would like to have a chance to provide some rebuttal to each of these opponents.
Sure, you can proceed.
Let me just revisit the overall map. More particularly, one second. This is the subject parcel. The parcel already has a 40-acre area of that's heavy industry zoned. It's adjacent to the large parcel to the southeast. That was actually in front of this board a month or two ago. In fact, unfortunately, it was a matter of timing. The owner of this particular, the subject parcel of today's hearing, had not yet agreed to sell the parcel for the purpose of our project, and therefore we missed the submission deadline back in, I think, December 23rd. If that had not been the case, in fact, the property came through in early January. Had it not been the case, we would have had one application at the time. So we're not trying to be a serial applicant of large parcels. It was unfortunate timing that this parcel looks like it's a whole new process, but when in fact it is part of the prior application. What we're trying to do is in this, or maybe it's helpful here, we are trying to build a large industrial facility near the Griffith plant in what's already heavy industrial. That area surprisingly lacks power. It looks like there are power plants, but they're all selling power to other sources, or they're a local peaker plant. There is no power. So that area actually has become sort of a bring your own power industrial zone. And we felt that it was would be very helpful for us to create a pure green sustainable project on a temporary basis, because it may outlive the applicant, but it will not outlive, they're always temporary, 30, 35 years, that's a temporary application. The total capital investment for the whole project is $500 million, which will bring both some employment, a lot of employment during construction, permanent employment, albeit for renewable projects. It's always relatively limited because very little happens at these sites other than cleaning. But it will bring property tax values to the county that can be deployed very well. We actually went to meet with the immediate owners of the parcels. What is important, first of all, is to note that this is an area that is heavily impacted by floodplains, which make them less than perfect for permanent structures, because these would oppose the water flow. And you can see there are two large interstate gas pipelines running across. Now, Mrs. Young previously mentioned, well, why are we building in an area that has gas pipelines? This is actually a picture of the power plant in Joy Lane. You'll see actually an opening here in the middle, and that is actually where the Southwest gas pipeline runs through. So it's highly usual and not strange at all to be able to work around a gas pipeline for a solar farm, although it would not be recommendable for residential purposes. for a number of good reasons. We then, following last session, we went to meet in person with the only two residents in the area. These residential Sacramento Ranchos developments were developed to be sold, but maybe less so to be purchased back in 2005 and 6. In fact, if you look at the area in general, and the little blue dots are all the property tax delinquent parcels being sold by the county as of their most recent date. And that suggests that a lot of parcel owners in that particular residential area have somehow abandoned their desire to reside there. And they're willing to walk away from their ownership. To be more precise, back to who we met, in the northwest corner, there are a number of, there are only two parcels surrounding the entire area that have either a built-on structure or where someone resides. We met in person with the two parcel owners, one of which is adjacent to the parcel of Mrs. Young, the opponent. We went to meet with them. The immediate neighbor of Mrs. Young owns and has built a modern storage facility there. We met with them last week. They submitted a letter in support. They think it's a great plan. In fact, they would like to see if they can make their parcel available going forward as part of our project. We then met with the only residents who have a primary residence in this area, the Prather family. They were highly in support. They wrote a letter in support. Mrs. Young, here in this parcel, it's a vacant parcel. She resides in Lake Havasu. We communicated. We pointed her to the Joy Lane solar farm, and that's important because that solar farm is being maintained by Mohave Electric Co-op, which is purchasing the parcel. It has been under contract with them and being maintained for the years prior to their purchase by the largest utility in the country. So we sold those assets back in 2015. Therefore, we cannot really be held responsible for the maintenance by the local utility. Now, we also, in the context of the argument that by some of the opponents about value, what we felt was we went to talk to the owner of all the parcels back in Fort Mohave, with this being this is the first solar farm that she mentioned in one of her pictures, and this is another large solar farm. These have been in operation since 2015-16. The whole area has been rezoned for solar overlay. Back in 2014, we reached out to the owner of the large 230-acre parcel on which is hosting the parcels. That's also the developer of the large several hundred-acre Sunrise Hill development for RV homes. And we asked for his opinion. He was a former supervisor, Ronald Bernstein. We asked for his opinion about all of the parcels that have been sold that have immediate view of the solar farms and the additional solar overlay that was approved back in early 2020. And he submitted an overview to the county last week, opining that in his opinion, there are no negative detrimental impacts on value from living near or in view of a solar farm. In fact, he himself sold a parcel immediately adjacent to the solar farm earlier last year, and the same owner acquired another 12 acres for a total value of over $200,000 immediately next to the solar farm. none of the homes that he's building with a view of the solar farm, he can't keep up with the sale. The residential homes, all with a view of the solar farms along what used to be Vanderslice Road, are selling like hotcakes. So if you have a good property market, parcels will sell even in view of a solar farm, such as proposed here. A better overview, these are the parcels that were sold earlier this year in February for a total of $200,000, immediately adjacent to the solar farm. Now, looking at the parcels of the opponents, here is a map of where those parcels are located. That's a county map with an overlay of the FEMA flood zone parcels. Here is the parcel of Mrs. Young and her husband. And here is the parcel of Mr. Colmoni. Mr. Colmoni apparently is not aware that early this year, the entire section to the east of his parcel has been rezoned for a solar overlay, and that his parcel is immediately adjacent to a county water well, and he's located in a flood zone. Similarly, the parcel of Mrs. Johnson, Mrs. Young is close to and partially located in a flood zone. This is the Young parcel, again, adjacent to the only residence in the area, the owner of the storage unit and the Prather family that live there year-round. We mentioned to Mrs. Young that in all likelihood, given the Zone A and the very strong current of the wash, this may not be adequate for a meaningful construction of a solar farm. So just by way of illustration, we offered to her, we would not build within a 300 foot in front of her parcel. And we created a map on your GIS system showing a 300 foot buffer around her parcel. Similarly, for Mr. Colmoni, with whom we've been in contact, he's smack in the middle of a FEMA zone, and therefore, we'd be deep into a wash within this 300-foot range. Both Mrs. Young and Mr. Colmoni proffered at their own initiative, if they're opposed, but if we offer to purchase their parcel, they'll be fine. Unfortunately, the offer or the request for pricing that came in by Mrs. Young late last week is a multiple in the 25 times the appraised value of parcels in the area. But we are willing to do whatever it takes for, as a good neighbor, we'll clearly be a good non-public services using neighbor. We also propose to the residents here that we will, from an entry point of view, we'll only enter the parcel from West Oatman Highway, and therefore we are mindful both for ourselves and for the neighborhood to improve at our expense the half a mile between the northwest corner of the parcel and the West Oatman Highway, because we are all aligned that we don't like dust. Dust is the enemy of efficient solar production, and therefore we will mitigate any dust concern. There shouldn't be any dust concern regarding the southeast corner, because we don't want to be there. As regards Mr. Adams, in my impression, having seen the area, he is referring to the Pegasus site along the I-40, which indeed had jumped the gun by building and flattening the area before there was any commercial viability for that project. And we've committed before, and it makes no economic sense to do anything until we are there for the entirety of the project. And as you are aware, under the county ordinance. As part of our building permit submission, we have to have a financially backed decommissioning plan. So when we leave, or when the project is at its life cycle end, we will have the funding available in whichever the manner that's required by the county, and we've done that before. We will not leave you with the remnants of a failed project, because either we won't buy it, and if it operates, we will take it apart. And in fact, the presence of the Nucor steel recycling plant turns our leftovers into a viable commercial asset. So all we want to do is be a good neighbor. We think it's a very good plan for the area. It's the only way we can energize a industrial facility in your industrial zone. And we'll do whatever it takes to be a good neighbor. That's why we reached out in person and met in person with the neighbors to find a mitigation solution. And the answer came back, well, just, what are you going to offer to buy us out for? Do you have any questions?
Questions for Mr. Fromm? Supervisor Lingenfelter.
Thank you, Chairman Gould. Mr. Fromm, thank you for your testimony today. Just a quick question to educate me. How much power does 1 acre of these photovoltaic panels generate per year, would you say?
Typically, it takes about 6 acres for 1 megawatt. And the reason is what's called inter-row shading. You have to have enough space in between each row of solar panels so that the top, at any time of the day, the sun or the row in front of you doesn't cast a shadow at to the bottom of the next row, making that a useless part of the system.
Sure. You said 6 acres to generate 1 megawatt of power. Is that correct. Per day or per year?
We have, solar, as you may be aware, has a capacity factor of about, let's call it, on average, 8 hours a day. In fact, there's a lot of seasonality, so there'll be a lot less in Q4 and Q1, and much more in the summer. But on average, let's say a third of the day, 8 hours, it'll produce.
Yeah, I'm just trying to do some rough math here. So you said 6 acres essentially for 1 megawatt of power. Is that per day? Essentially just...
Well, per hour.
Per hour. Okay. Well, the reason I'm asking is maybe you could help me do the math here too. So in February of 22, we approved 1,484 acres. Now this is 641 acres. The total of those is 2,125 acres. Are you looking to secure additional acres in the same facility as well?
No, if we can make this parcel work for the purpose, we'd like to be done and actually go on to the next phase.
Okay, so we're dealing with 2,125 acres of PV panels.
Can I help you, Supervisor? Okay. We're looking to produce about 550 megawatts.
550?
Correct.
Okay.
And that will result in about 400 plus megawatts usable, because you lose a lot of capacity before you actually end up with power that you can use.
Okay.
Wiring, dirt, the way the systems have parasitic losses.
I got you. And you testified before in February that when you were asked, you didn't have a power purchase agreement with any of the utility companies in place. Is that this?
That's correct, because we will be self-generating. We are making the power for our own use because we want to be where the heavy industrial zone is, near the power plant, but there is no grid power available.
Okay.
And therefore we have to bring your own bottle, we bring our own power.
And you also, correct me if I'm mistaken, in February you testified that the reason you didn't have a power purchase agreement was because you already had a company that was committed to using this power.
Correct.
So my question is, and correct me if I'm mistaken, 500 megawatts and above is considered a utility scale project, right?
Correct.
And you're saying that you have a business that's going to be using that much power in a year. And so in my mind, I'm really curious as to what kind of a business can consume that much power in 1 year.
A power-hungry business on a very small footprint.
Well, power, as anybody that's familiar with economic development, is just one piece of the puzzle, right? There's water use. Is it a water-intensive industry that you're going to be bringing in? Like a bottling plant or something?
I'd like to, because this is a public hearing, and I'm not at liberty prematurely to talk about the overall project.
Sure, and I can
the
respect
solar
that.
farms, as we discussed before, have extremely limited water use, akin to, literally per section of real estate, to a few residential homes based on their daily use. We would only, if at all, we would only seek to clean those panels, periodically. And in fact, we are looking into, as everyone is, given the water concerns, we are all looking into called cleaning robots that basically go like automatic squeegees to recycle their own water.
Sure. Yeah, and if this is approved today, I certainly hope, in line with your former testimony, that you'll get as close to dry cooling as possible. I mean,
absolutely.
But really, what my question is, I see 2,125 acres, over 500 megawatts of power generated a year, and I don't know which business has committed to come into this area. I don't know if the business is the right fit. I mean, is it going to be somebody that's very water intensive? That's kind of we don't know anything about the business that is, you're telling us is obligated to coming in and using over 500 megawatts of power every year.
Well, it'd be
interesting to me.
I'll put it differently. In order to be able to use the assets productively, we need to run 24/7. And as you are aware, if you only have 8 hours worth of sunshine, we need to have battery storage in order to be able to continue to run. So it's not, we're going to overproduce during the day in order, let's call it split 50-50, in fact, even less. We need to put a lot of power into the battery storage to run the other 16 hours.
Sure, and I do appreciate that, but I think it's a significant amount of power, and I'm just running through the list of businesses that I'm aware of from economic development, and there's not a whole lot that use that amount of power.
Well, if you divide it by 3, we're effectively looking at, let's say, 200 megawatts worth of power.
So it's 3 businesses or 1 business?
One business.
Just 1 business. That's a concern of mine. How long do the PV panels generate? I know you said I've heard temporary. How many years does it operate? What's the useful life?
My partner, whom you may have met in the past, is living off-grid in California, and he's had panels for 40 years. So on paper, panels degrade by 0.5% per year, but in practice, manufacturers, to protect their guarantees, they make them a little bit more powerful than they proclaim, but they will run for at least 30, 35 years.
Yeah. And the business that you're saying is going to be using all this power, do they have any concerns that at the end, where are they going to get their power at the end of their useful life of these
That might be the end of either you quote unquote repower, you could rebuild if there's demand for the product at that point in time. You can rebuild and put new panels in. In fact, you can do that over time. And I can't speak for the future because in all likelihood, by that time, I won't be here to witness it.
Yeah, I appreciate your testimony. I just have a hard time I feel like I've got 2 playing cards and only one's facing up and I don't know what's underneath the other one. It's like
I understand, Supervisor Lingenfelter. But I think the topic of today, to my belief, was to see opine on the compatibility of the solar parcel, and therefore I don't want to I'd like to stay focused on that, that narrow task.
Thank you for your time today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Further questions for Mr. Fromm? Supervisor Bishop.
Thank you, Chairman Gold. So in February, we approved the rezone for the 1,500 acres that Supervisor Lincolnfelter mentioned. And now you're wanting to rezone another 640 acres? And then is that the end of your request, or will you be expanding and purchasing more property for the same?
We would very much like for this to be the end.
Okay, you mentioned the property by the name of Pegasus. I'm not sure I understood. Do you have part of that property already purchased?
I was referring to the comment by Mr. Adams regarding all the dust created for a project that then never happened, and with a section of that parcel, even as visible from Google Earth, serving as a parking lot for trailers with random trailers, but a lot of them with solar panels on them, which looked like abandoned equipment. And I was merely referring to the fact that that is not what we will be doing.
Okay, so you have not purchased any of that property formerly owned by Pegasus or your company?
We have.
You have, and how much of that do you own?
All of it. Rather under contract.
Okay, so it's just under contract.
Correct.
Do you intend
in escrow?
Do you intend to go forward and make that a solar overlay as well?
No, I don't think it's necessary because it's sitting in a heavy industrialized zone.
Okay. Are you in a position where you can share what your plans are for that property?
Solar.
Okay, so
it is bisected by the Griffith Wash, so there's in part a similar issue as we have in the entire area. That washes make it extremely difficult to do anything other than have solar panels on, 3, 4, 5, 6 foot poles so the water can flow through.
So how many acres is that property?
That is 716.9 acres.
Okay. In addition to the 2,000 acres that...
Well, all of it enables the totality of the solar farm. We need to find homes for it.
Okay.
So we're retroactively grateful for the head-first approach by the prior owner. So now we don't have to do what he did prematurely.
Okay, Mr. Adams mentioned that your solar farm is going to be similar to that of Pegasus in that they will be, the solar panels will be on trailers?
No, not at all.
That's not true.
We've never seen it happen other than on the parking lot of the abandoned Pegasus site.
Okay.
Just a very traditional, as few moving parts as possible, traditional solar farm.
Okay, and it does concern me somewhat that we don't know what kind of a business you're selling all this power to. I agree with Supervisor Lincolnfelter. I think that's a concern.
Would that not be something, supervisors, that can be dealt with in the context of a building permit application?
Is this something that you could share with us if we continued this item?
Well, we don't want to speak out of turn before we actually have overall project viability, because then we get the same, we don't want the press to start speaking out of turn.
That's true, but if we approve this, we don't want the press second guessing this board as well.
Well,
for making a decision without all the information. So
my request would be that we can deal with that in the context of our building permit, but we need to, unless we complete this unless we complete this, the power plant aspect of creating the very foundation for an industrial activity, we cannot even get to that point. So we would be delighted to work with you as a county and with your economic development director. Be a good, green, sustainable citizen.
Okay, that's all the questions I have.
Chairman Gould.
Supervisor Lingenfelter.
To follow up on Supervisor Bishop's comments, typically, in order to make sure that everybody understands what you're really voting on and getting yourself into, a non-disclosure agreement or an NDA could be signed between our county economic development director and your company under a cone of silence, and you could disclose, these types of details. I mean, if with no one else, with the district supervisor. I mean, this is in Gene's district, and I know if it was my district, I would want you guys to sign an NDA with our economic development director so she fully understood and could communicate to me and to the others on this board exactly what you were envisioning. Right now, we only see the power component. That's a very small piece. So I have some hesitation with approving.
From a capital point of view, the solar farm is by far the most expensive, capital intensive aspect of the project.
Not disputing that. I just want to know who's using the power. And under an NDA, I would hope that you would be able to tell our economic development director who that is.
And
sign NDAs?
It's just that this is a public forum.
Of course.
This is not the right forum.
No, and that's why I'm saying that if this were to be continued as Supervisor Bishop had suggested possibly, that during that time that it's continued, you could sign some sort of an NDA or something that would make you comfortable that details aren't going to leak to the public. I understand you don't want details in economic development deals to leak out, but at least it would give those that are responsible for making responsible decisions,
sure,
the information that we need. I mean, if someone came to you and said, hey, we want you to make this decision, but we're only going to give you 50% or 25% of the information, would you do it? I hesitate.
May I request that as far as I believe the task at hand was to establish whether the subject parcel was compatible given similar uses, either adjacent or in the area, and we filed an application on that basis.
Yeah, and that is true, but I think you need to understand that the Board of Supervisors has the authority to use their own judgment as to whether or not to vote yes or no.
In the context of an NDA, we'd be happy to sit down with you.
Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Johnson.
You were in front of this board before and got your zoning and your overlay zone, and you made no mention of this piece of property. And that concerns me. And now you're coming back saying, oh, I want this. You're not very forthcoming. I understand business models and how you need to keep things secret. But our planning and zoning has recommended denial of this portion, and I will stick with that. That's all, Mr. Chair.
Chairman, can I, Supervisor Johnson, from a timing point of view, we had filed the application for the rezone for this particular parcel at the last Monday or Wednesday of January, and I believe we met regarding for the approval of the prior parcels on the first Monday of February. At that point, I think the question didn't come up. It's not that I've been secretive about it. There was no need to, because we just went through the motions of filing an application with staff that hadn't even gone through the point of being submitted to the Planning and Zoning Commission. And it's all part of as we were fully transparent about, it was all about we need a significant amount of energy for our own use because the area, in spite of being industrially zoned, has no power. So I just want to make sure that we were as transparent as we could be at that time. And in fact, even through the first the zoning and planning commission hearing a few weeks ago, even at that point, staff had not yet updated the information for the planning and zoning commission regarding the fact that the abutting parcel had already been zoned for solar overlay, i.e. the parcel to the southeast of the subject parcel. So everything was very much in flux, and things just happened sequentially in line with the county's required steps for filing these applications for rezone approvals. So we were in with staff and trying to put together a package for the Planning and Zoning Commission for the meeting that was held last week, or I think in early March.
Supervisor Bishop.
Chairman Gold, I would be interested in hearing what the assessor might have to say in regards to taxes and ask if the Economic Development Director has any input at all.
I believe I see both the assessor and the economic developer sitting in the audience. Shall I summon them?
Yes, please.
Come on down.
Chairman, Supervisor Bishop, can I answer some questions?
Good morning, Madam Assessor. I love your first name, by the way. How is this going to affect taxes on these properties?
There are no values for panels, so the only thing would be the commercial property itself.
Okay, so the solar panels, we don't
there was
get
a
any
law
tax
that got
revenue.
passed, correct, and there's no zero value on those.
Okay, interesting.
Assessor? So the panels themselves have no value, or the entire facility has no value?
So the panels themselves will have no value. So if there's going to be a building built for it, then that would have value, and then the land itself would also have value.
How about the racks that the solar panels sit on and the wiring inside the facility?
That's a good question. It's only 1 year since they've had that legislative change, and they told us that panels were of no value. So how I can break it up, I don't know. I would have to check.
Thank you. Might check the perimeter fencing also.
That would, but that would for commercial have a value, yes.
Okay, thank you.
What questions can I answer?
Cammie, I was just wondering if you had any thoughts or comments. This is your area of expertise with our economic development of this county. You've heard the discussion here this morning. Would you agree with the recommendation that this needs to be continued? Do you have any other insight that might help us making a decision today?
Mr. Fromm and I are going to meet after this meeting, so I would probably defer till after that meeting before I continue. Obviously, it will bring some taxes, not a lot of employees for any solar project. So when I look at a project, I look at how many employees it's going to bring, what the impacts can be to the county. And so after I meet with him, like you said, after this meeting, then I'll have more of those answers.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Chairman Gold, I will make a motion that we continue this for 30 days.
I'll second.
You've heard that motion and second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say nay.
Nay.
The ayes appear to have it. Do have it, so ordered. You know what? That was a public hearing. Let me go back and close the public hearing. Let me let Mr. Fromm close, and then I'm going to close the public hearing, and then you can make a motion if you so desire.
Okay.
Chairman Gold, Supervisors, I just want to clarify something regarding the assessor. The statement by the assessor has to do with rooftop solar, which is deemed to have quote unquote, add no value to the property. Whereas in our case, it would appear that the project would be centrally assessed, as are the other solar farms in Fort Mohave. And as a result, they would be subject to the assessment by the Department of Revenue in Phoenix. And therefore, I think there's a confusion regarding rooftop solar and standalone solar farms.
Thank you, sir.
And therefore, we are budgeting very significant amounts of annual property tax, like any solar farm, as if it were the other ones that we've already built and that you can check.
Sure.
So it's not a rooftop.
Okay,
Therefore,
thank you.
everything will be subject to tax.
Thank you, sir. Supervisor Bishop, care to make your motion?
Yeah, the public hearing has been closed now.
I'm going to close the public hearing. Supervisor Bishop, do you care to make your motion?
Yes, I will make a motion that we continue this item for 30 days.
I'll renew my second.
You hear that motion in a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay.
Nay.
The ayes appear to have it. Do have it. So ordered. Item 69 is a public hearing. I'm going to open the public hearing on item 69.
69 or 68?
Did I skip?
Yeah.
68. Let me close the public hearing on 69, go back to 68. I'm going to open the public hearing on item 68. While making sure I have no one that wants to testify on item 68. Anyone here to testify on item 68? Hearing none, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing on item 68. What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Lingenfelter.
Make a motion to approve BOS resolution number 2022-057.
Second.
You've heard that motion and second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The ayes appear to have it. Do have it. So ordered. Item 69 is a public hearing. I'm going to open that public hearing. Anyone here to testify on item 69? Hearing none, I'm going to close the public hearing on item 69. What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Lingenfelter.
Make a motion to approve BOS ordinance number 2022-02.
Second.
You've heard that motion and second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say nay. The ayes appear to have it. Do have it. So ordered. Let's see. Item 70. Mr. Walsh.
Chairman Gould, Supervisors, good morning. Still good morning. Item 70 is the sign ordinance that was brought before you in February. Based on the board's discussion and some of the concerns which were raised, an additional change to the ordinance was made, removing a portion that prohibited signs which contain advertising matter which is untruthful. Everything else has remained the same as was previously proposed.
Questions for Mr. Walsh? Hearing none, thank you, sir.
Motion to approve.
Second.
You've heard that motion and second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The ayes appear to have it. Do have it, so ordered. At the request of Supervisor Lingenfelter, he's going to pull item 71. Item 72. Mr. Latosky.
Yes, Chairman Gould, members of the board, this item concerns the request to form a new improvement district. It's an improvement district for domestic water purposes in the Havasu Heights area. The idea behind the water district is to provide for a public water system that would be backbone to a pending subdivision development that is in the works. I believe they had their preliminary plat and they're pursuing developing a subdivision area.
Questions for Mr. Latosky? Hearing none, thank you, sir. What's the pleasure of the board?
Motion approved.
Second.
You've heard that motion and second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The ayes appear to have it. Do have it. So ordered. We've already done 73. Number 74, County Manager.
Mr. Chairman, board members, item number 74 is a routine intergovernmental agreement with the Arizona County Insurance Pool. This is a renewal of an existing IGA. It's done every 10 years. The county attorney's office has reviewed this IGA. It's ready for board approval, and we recommend you do so.
Questions for the County Manager? Hearing none, what's the pleasure of the board?
Motion approved.
Second.
For that motion and second, any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The ayes appear to have it. Do have it, so ordered. Number 75, County Manager.
Mr. Chairman, board members, thanks again. The board previously expressed intent to discuss the duties and salaries of the constables, discuss their salaries and performance. The state statutes dictate the timeline for any action related to this, and that timeline is approaching per statutes. So this item is truly for discussion only. We wanted the board to have that discussion and be ready to vote and take action between now and the end of June. We see this as two parts, board member and chairman. First one is a discussion related to the justice of the peace precincts, how many of them, and acknowledging that with each precinct there's a constable. Once that discussion is had and the board settles that, then the next step would be the discussion related to salaries and budgets and so on. So please keep that in mind as we deliberate on this. Again, the intent today was to have a platform for the board to discuss it. I will turn it over to the county attorney's office here shortly to discuss with you the law side of it, what the statutes require, and what discretion, what limitation or restrictions there are. And then we can talk about the salaries and performance and so on. I would also, before I turn it over to the county attorney's office, remind the board that my understanding is this discussion was had a few years back. I believe it was in 2018. The Department of Financial Services, Coral Lloyd as the director, and her team provided the board at that time with information related to budget approved revenues by the constables, and then the associated performance. If the board would like to have that done when we come back to you for further discussion and action, we will be more than happy to provide similar information. We can provide what we provided before or tweak it in any way the board would like to ensure that you have the relevant information at hand to make a decision. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to the county attorney's office. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chair, the statutes that I think are most applicable to this are ARS 11251. This is the general statute for the Board of Supervisors' powers and duties. One of the areas of authority of this board is to divide precincts, to make the boundaries and lines. The next statute that I'll reference is ARS 11424.01. This is the statute that gives this board authority to set constable salaries. Once salaries are set, once boundaries are drawn, they're in effect throughout the duration of that elected constable's term. And so they can't be changed midterm or after they've been elected by the voters. So the statute on that same one that I just cited regarding setting salaries says that these salaries are set at the June meeting. In other words, about a month from now. So thus the county manager's bringing this up now so that this board can discuss and decide and give direction to the county if it's directing the county to change anything with regards to the current boundaries. Once those boundaries are set, it helps in those deciding to run for office. It helps in this board then has authority within a range to set the salary. That range is set by statute. But again, that needs to be done in a meeting next month.
Questions? Supervisor Bishop.
Mr. Attorney, is it possible that we could redistrict the Justice Court precincts and just make one precinct for Mohave County, thereby having one elected constable for the county who would then conceivably hire deputy constables to work under his authority and guidance? And then with the Justice Court just having one precinct, we would have a presiding justice of the peace who could basically do the same thing and hire judges or commissioners to work under his authority.
Mr. Chair, Supervisor Bishop, yes, this board, as I noted, does have the authority to set precinct boundaries. There's nothing that requires a certain number, whether that's 1 or 6 or anything more than that. And so if this board does decide to make it 1, that certainly is within the authority of this board. As you noted, constables do have the authority to work within their budgets to hire deputy constables, so that's something that can be done. With regards to the court aspect or the justice of the peace aspect, I have to admit I haven't looked at that angle as much as to their authority to hire or work to appoint commissioners or other judges to work with them. But certainly with regards to the constables, I know that's allowed. So while I haven't researched it for the justices of the peace, I'm going to assume there's something similar to where handling those cases would be possible in the courts.
Okay, I would like to see that investigated. I think rather than changing the wording of the Arizona Constitution, this would be one way to solve the issue with the constables. And I know it would have a profound effect on our elected justice of the peaces, but like any election, at least they would know going forward that they were running for a position of the presiding justice of the peace, who would then hire commissioners to work under them. I would like to see that at least visited and And I think it's something that many of our other smaller counties would probably be interested in seeing what we could do with that and maybe follow suit.
Mr. Chair?
Supervisor Johnson.
The deadline's a day to file though, correct?
Yes.
So we're a little late on our jurisdictions. It's interesting, you know, what you bring up on having one and having them do it. You know, part of the problem is we spend over $500,000 on the constables. An average year they bring in, you know, 1 year 65,000, 1 year 72, but at the same time, half of that is charged back in mileage. It's not a good work program for what we're getting. And I think at the last meeting when we discussed this, we talked about having uniform reporting and electronic reporting, which hasn't been done by some of the, I can check with the clerk. Has that been done, clerk? I don't think it has.
Chairman Gould, Supervisor Johnson, there are still 2 constables that are still handwriting and turning in paper copies versus using the online clean submission format.
And these submissions, they aren't uniform as is part of the problem. And some people put mileage down. The correct way to do mileage, at least the way I've always been taught, is you put down the actual mileage on your vehicle when you start and the actual mileage when you end. Sometimes that's not being done, but I think those, if we continue with this, that's going to need to be corrected. But because those are the concerns I have. We have a tremendous amount of money for the, you know, for the 4 we have down here with very little work for them to do.
Chairman Gould.
Supervisor Lingenfelter.
This issue is relatively new to me, so I reached out to Attorney Esplin for my own understanding, to find out under statute what functions do the constables have to do, what functions can private providers do. And I was interested, and I think I shared that response or that communication from Ryan with everybody on the board, that there's a lot of functions that the private process servers can provide. And, you know, maybe those are being provided by the constables right now. So I think that if the public out there are using these process servers, then they're the ones that are picking up the cost to make those things happen. You know, I think that's something that I would support. Anything that we can have the private process servers do, not only takes away from the constable's workload, but also, you know, it saves the county money from having to pay mileage and all those other things, where you have a private server that's, you know, you got to use a core process and you pay the fee to use that private process server. So I would hope that that would be something that we would entertain, as well as we're looking at the duties, in setting salaries and whatever else we have to do. But the more we can involve the private sector, I think the better.
Further comments?
Chairman Gould, the County Supervisors Association has looked into this issue with the constables statewide, and they've come up with some interesting statistics and information, and they studied constables over all 15 counties. But I forwarded an email summary that CSA sent me Friday, and I hope you all had a chance to read that. But, you know, one of the major drawbacks with the study they did was that most of the logs constables were turning in were not of high quality, and some Mohave County constables submitted handwritten logs like we discussed, and these logs were not easily turned into data, and they included items other than service attempts. So it was very confusing, and I've found the same thing looking at the constable's logs. It seems like everybody has their own idea of what information they need to report or not, if indeed they even followed the guidelines of a monthly report. So I think I think going forward, I would really like to see us look into having the presiding constable and a presiding justice of the peace, and then we have a little more control over what the constables are doing, because they would be answering to presiding constable who would obviously get a higher salary, and that presiding constable could also hire process servers. They would not have to hire a deputy constable to do the majority of the work. So yeah, I just would like have the supervisors look at the information sent by CSA prior to our meeting in June, where we will have an agenda item discussing the actual salary of the constables. And at that time, I'd like to also have a report from the county attorney's office as to whether or not we can go with just one JP and one constable.
Further comments or questions?
So Chairman Gold, we do have the presiding constable for Mohave County in the audience. He was just given that honorary title, but if there's any questions, I'm sure he is more than ample and ready to answer questions.
Do we have questions for the presiding constable? No. No.
Okay, thank you for coming, Mike.
Would you care to speak, sir? Thank you. Okay, we will move on. So we're on item 76, Supervisor Lingenfelter.
Thank you, Chairman Gould. This is the latest action in Mohave County's work on the fourth priority Colorado River transfer, GSC Farm, proposed fourth priority Colorado River transfer to the town of Queen Creek, Arizona. So the draft, federal government's draft environmental assessment is out. We're in the public comment period, which ends on the 15th of this month. And we're looking for this board to vote on submitting additional comments on behalf of the County of Mohave, having the Chairman Gould sign and getting those submitted prior to the deadline. Thank you.
Questions, comments? It's a pleasure of the board.
I'll make a motion that we authorize the chairman of the board to sign the letter.
Second.
You heard that motion and second. Any further discussion?
And Mr. Chair, if I could chime in.
Chime in.
On that motion, the motion was just to authorize the chairman to sign the letter. I would ask that the motion be broad enough that we keep working on this letter. This letter is currently in draft format. We're working with the attorney that this board previously authorized funds to be available for. And that was as much as that attorney could put together prior to this meeting, but there may be some additional thoughts to be added to that letter. There's not another board meeting prior to this deadline for submitting this letter. Thus, it's on this agenda. But the hope is that my office could then work with that attorney, finalize the letter, and provide a final copy for the chair to sign. So my request is that the motion be broad enough to say authorize the county staff or county attorney's office to continue working with the attorney to provide a letter to the chairman to sign prior to that submittal deadline.
Okay, Chairman Gould, I'll amend my motion to state what the attorney just summarized.
I'll reaffirm my second.
You've heard that motion and second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The ayes appear to have it. Do have it. So ordered. Item 77, Supervisor Bishop.
Thank you, Chairman Gould. This morning, we're going to be asking the president of the Kingman Young Professional Group, Lauren Peterson, to give us a presentation that will relate how this group hopes to expand partnerships and connect members of our communities in a way that will help Mohave County retain our employees as well as other businesses throughout the throughout the county. So this is a group that I've been following for about a year quietly, and they just recently gave a presentation to the Rotary Club, which I found interesting, and that told me that they were ready to go public with their group. And so I contacted the president, and she was more than happy to give this presentation to us. And I wanted to also thank Supervisor Lingenfelter, who's kind of taken this group under his wing for the past year. But I think it's now time for all of the Board of Supervisors to be aware of this amazing young group and what they can do to benefit Mohave County. And after you see their presentation, if you so desire, they would like to use the county seal on some of their promotional materials as a showing of support. So, Ms. Peterson, go ahead.
Thank you for having us. I'm actually going to have Ms. Fossen open with a little background information.
Hi, Chairman Gould and Supervisors, thank you for having us here today. I'm Becky Fossen. I am the President and CEO of the Kingman Area Chamber of Commerce, and obviously I am not a young professional. I think most of you know that I did retire from Mohave County a couple of years ago before taking on this job, and I just wanted to kind of let you know why it is the Chamber of Commerce is involved. When I was at the Legal Defender's Office, Ron and I hired a lot of young attorneys through the years that I was there, and most of them were from larger cities or, you know, from out of the area. And we were always very selective when we were doing our hiring that people were going to be happy living in this area. And we were very, very conscious of trying to get them out and into the community and meet people and make this their home. And we were actually very successful at doing that. In fact, I like to toot our horn here on this one. We actually had a 5-year span where we had absolutely no turnover in our office, from the secretaries all the way through to the attorneys. We had absolutely no turnover, and in criminal defense, that's just an amazing statistic. And I think that had a lot to do with the fact that we really encouraged our people to get engaged in the community, join service organizations, churches, whatever their passion was, you know, get out there and make friends. And we also had other attorneys who went on to open up private practice and stuff and stay here in the area. So I consider that a success as well. Anyway, I think Kingman is a great place to live, but it is hard to get out and meet people, and this is just a great avenue for us to do this. And through the Chamber of Commerce, we have a workforce development committee, and this falls right in line with that because we're helping develop and keep a workforce here. And so we became involved to give them a place to start. They're eventually going to start their own 501c3, but we're there just for mentoring and encouragement and that type of stuff. So I wanted to thank the core group that helped start this. It came through Local First Arizona. We had Gary Kellogg from the City Economic Development Team, Tammy Ursenbach from the County Economic Development Team, and Supervisor Lingenfelter were there early on to help us get this going. And we really appreciate you doing that, but we're ready to go the next step, as Supervisor Bishop said. So what we need more than anything right now is access to these young professionals. It's just hard to get the word out. And so what we would like to do is be able to access your young employees. And we're also going to reach out to city, we're going to reach out to the hospital. In fact, we have on some levels, the school district, CAMA through their employee organization there, to reach out to a lot of the young professionals here in the area. And Tammy, I know all of the rules and stuff on all Mohave County users and those types of things. So we have talked to Tammy, and she's going to allow us to distribute through the Economic Development newsletter to get it out. But we just wanted to let you know that that's where we are, and what we need from you guys is just the support. And thank you again for allowing us to present today. And now our real young professional, Lauren's going to give you what they're up to, what they've done, and where they want to go from here. So thank you again.
Thank you, Ms. Fossen. So we have been established for a year in May, and what we've done over that year is we've kind of been asking why the young professionals are coming here. So if you didn't know, Salary is good. We have a fairly low cost of living, so especially when you get people like me or a few others who are single, they're kind of getting into their first real jobs, we can afford to live here relatively comfortably without having to get side hustles, second jobs, or anything else. As someone who did come from a city, at one point in time, I was working 3 jobs on top of my profession to make ends meet. So Mohave County is a great place to come get established and started. We also have student loan forgiveness. So this is mostly in our medical industry and manufacturing. They come here, they stay in a rural area for 3 years, and they can help get student loan forgiveness or assistance in paying it. And during that 3 years is a primary pocket for us to say, you really need to stay in the community. It's awesome, grow here, and everything else. So a young professional, as Becky mentioned, Local First came to us with the idea. We kind of picked it up and started rolling with it. They saw the need in the manufacturing. So our statement of purpose was basically Kingman Young Professionals Group is aimed at creating opportunities for young leaders to build relationships and connections within the community. So far, we have hosted 12 events. We have 140 active members in our Facebook group. We have about 60 who are active in person. Our events, we have 14 to 30 people. It really does depend. So our events are shifted between weekday, weekend, morning, and evening to kind of facilitate shift work, traditional work schedules, and the entrepreneurs we are seeing. The 4 big industries we are pulling from right now is healthcare. So the doctors, nurses, a lot of traveling nurses popping in, trying to determine if they do want to stay with the hospital. Manufacturing, education, and the legal sectors. So we have a lot of people who are on internships, or once again, this is their first job out of college and they're coming into their own. So far, with Local First, it was originally started as a social group where we'd host 1 networking event a month. So we've done quite a few of those. Over these networking events, we began to hear additional needs popping up. One of the most primary ones was professional development. Basically, I'm here now, what do I do? How do I take it to the next step? The social events were nice because it did help us kind of connect with other people in our neighborhood. So there were a handful, including myself. I was here about 8 months. Unfortunately, it was during the start of COVID, where I had no connections to the community. I felt no value in staying here, and I had actually begun looking for jobs to return to Salt Lake. I was not planning on staying longer until I got the opportunity to start the Young Professionals Group, and I actually got to start meeting other people in similar situations, similar age group, whether they're transplants or Kingman locals, to kind of engage us here. We've had a couple doctors say the same thing, that they had remained simply because they actually were able to form friendships and they did not feel as isolated or as alone. And quite a few were just kind of getting a little more sick of the bar culture where it was always, we're going to go down to Blackbridge and drink, and then there's no one to really talk to. So over that, you can see here, we had our opening social. We formed a kickball league. We watched Jurassic Park in the park. We've even started service projects with Mohave County Animal Shelter. I think they got 2 dog adoptions out of that, so they want us back. We've also been focusing on going to local small businesses. So we're in Mohave County. We want the young professionals to know what's in Mohave County. So we've been going to a lot of the Main Street businesses, Route 66 Marketplace, Quinn's Cages, a lot of the food truck things around here, just to let people see what's here versus it's not just this one little section of Stockton Hill. It's not just Main Street. There's so much more around here. And since we've started doing the local businesses, we have had a lot more people coming back and asking, what was the name of that address? I want to go there again. A lot more people kind of pulling back into the economy and realizing there's a lot more here than they realized. I mean, I think after we did the batting cages, I had about 15 people going, there's batting cages here. I want to do more with that. With professional development, this is a new series we've started. We are actually going on our 4th one. The highest demand we have had has been finance, because once again, a lot of these people, it's their first job, they're actually getting real salaries, they're having to budget student loans, mortgages, all that other fun together. So we have opened with basic finance. That was our New Year's one. We've had about 22 people there. We used a local CPA, Stanley Larson, who kind of directed it. We worked with Arizona at Work for a resume revamp workshop, which was basically, here's your resume, here's how you kind of curtail it, so when you are ready to move up in your company or take the next steps, here's how I can do it a little more proficiently. We did do tax basics, and we are doing another financial one at the end of April. If you would like to contact us, as Becky said, right now, because we are still under a year, we are kind of under the chamber for assistance just until we get a little more up on our feet. We're hoping by June to have our own 501c. You can contact us at the chamber or follow us on Facebook. Any questions?
Any questions?
Chairman Gould.
President Lingenfelter.
I just want to thank you both today for your presentation. You guys have accomplished a lot just in a short year. I do believe that this is something that can serve as a retention tool for our area, for some of the younger workers that are coming in, and like you said, they don't feel connected into the community. So I appreciate everything you guys are doing, and wish you the best in the future. Thank you.
Thank you once again for having us.
Chairman Gould.
Supervisor Angus.
Yeah, thank you very much for that presentation. Seems like you're doing great work. I really admire what you're doing, and I'm glad that Supervisors Lingenfelter and Bishop are a part of that. However, this item is to approve your organization to use our county seal. And I think that is a bad precedent because in the past, people have wanted to. I believe it's a dangerous road to go on unless you are part of the county in some capacity, but I don't really think that is something I can approve using our seal. And I do also hope, because it's not just our seal, but you're one city. And is the city allowing you to use their seal and their logo and stuff? The city of Kingman?
At the time, we're using Local First and then a sponsor of the event. So most of the events, they've cut us deals for a lower cost of use because we have such wide variety and salary ranges in a rural population. We try to keep the event cost between $10 to $15. So like when Quinn's Cages did it, we used their logo alongside Local First, as well as whoever is helping co-sponsor events.
Right, but has the city, I'm sorry if you answered this, I didn't hear it. Does the city of Kingman allow you to use their seal or logo?
To my knowledge.
Okay, I think I'm breaking up a bit. So was that a yes or a no?
Not to my knowledge, we have not used the city seal.
All right, have you approached them to use it? Because to me, that would make, honestly, a lot more sense to start. I don't know how big this is going to be, but right now, again, there are state statutes that protect our seal. And I'm not saying, I think it would be I'm not sure if it would be a wonderful thing or not, because eventually it could come back and hurt the county in some way. Not saying it's gonna, but that's the reason why there are these laws to protect our seal. So I hope you understand that. I support you if I can help you in any way, but I cannot support you using our county seal.
Thank you for your concerns. We will reach out to the city and using their seal first, and we'll come back in our second year when we plan on expanding to the rest of Mohave County for reconsideration.
Any other questions? Supervisor Bishop.
Lauren, thank you very much for coming and giving this presentation. I think it's a great benefit to the young employees of Mohave County, as I've already said, and for the rest of the county too. We want to keep our young people here because Mohave County is largely in the retirement age group. So we like to see the young people that's going to carry forward. And I know that Local First Arizona has helped you out financially, and I understand you've worked with county parks and the city of Kingman. Both have given you some help with space and things like that. So I hope your group continues to grow, and I hope more of our county employees will become members. I know we already have some county employees that are members, and I think your Jennifer Hayes is a member of your group, but she's here in the audience from Community Services. Jordan Cummings is your event planner, and she works for Mohave County Parks. So, you've already influenced some of our young people, and we appreciate that. So the use of the county seal is not going to make or break your organization, but I think that would be a nice touch if this board votes to have you use the county seal. If not, I think you could still go forward, and I hope you will continue to provide your information to our economic development person so that we can get it out to our employees.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Supervisor Lingenfelter.
Thank you, Chairman Gould. And I just want to throw out as well, I know Becky and yourself, working with Tammy and some others, on doing a series of workforce videos where I think that you guys are showing some of the young professional members in their positions in some of our manufacturers and things like that. Clearly, that's going to be a tool that can be used countywide for our economic development. So perhaps, you know, starting with that project, that's something that we could affix the county seal to show that Mohave County is a good place to live and work. Thank you.
Further questions? Do you need to take any action?
I think the way it was agendized, discussion of possible action, so I'll make a motion to approve the use of the county seal as a way to support the young professionals.
I'll second it.
Discussion.
Supervisor Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree with Supervisor Angus, the fact that we haven't given out the Mohave County seal to any organization. And while this is obviously a great idea they have, and it would have been nice to see it years ago throughout the county, and I'm sure that all of us will support them in any way we can, once we give this seal out, it's hard to deny somebody else that wants to use the seal, because everybody has a good idea, and that's the only problem I have. I think we're, you know, once you do it for one, you got to do it for all.
You've heard that motion. Any further discussion?
Chairman Gould, I would just add on to Supervisor Johnson's comment. He does raise a valid point. I think maybe, as I mentioned with the workforce videos, maybe we just approach it as like a project-specific basis. If it's something that's clearly a benefit to Mohave County, in addition to the cities, you know, you bring that back and say, hey, can we affix the county seal to that? Maybe you work with economic development, for instance, on those workforce videos to say, hey, you know, these videos would be enhanced by adding the seal or something like that, but on a project-specific basis rather than just a blanket.
Mr. Chairman?
Supervisor Johnson.
And I agree with Supervisor Lingenfelter. If the economic development has a part in developing these videos, then, you know, we should be on there saying, you know, in part help, you know, are supported by Mohave County, because it's only going to benefit us.
Chairman Gould.
Supervisor Bishop.
Very good points, and with that being said, I'll withdraw my motion.
Thank you, Supervisor. Okay, moving along. Item 79, Supervisor Lingenfelter.
Thank you, Chairman Gould. I'll make this short and sweet. This has to do with the rural management area legislation that Representative Cobb and this session, we've had Borelli and Biasucci and many others join her in a unified effort to try to push forward not only the priority 4 language that would protect our Colorado River fourth priority water, but also pressing and advocating for some new guardrails and really what I call a balancing tool with something called rural management area legislation. So we think that there might still be a chance to get that RMA language included, perhaps during the special session where they address water. I've been working with the certain supervisors from Coconino County, Chairman Horstrom, working with Yavapai County, Supervisor Judd down in Cochise, and the hope and the intent is to get this signed or a resolution that's very similar from all 4 of those medium-sized counties and submit that to both the governor and the legislators to really show that we in the rural medium counties support rural management area legislation. That's really all it is. Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Supervisor Johnson.
I have questions on rural management area. What's the difference between rural management and AMA?
As it's been described to me, there's a lot of rural pushback on the AMAs. For simplified fact that once an AMA is formed, you send all of your control down to ADWR and down into Phoenix, and there's a lot of opposition and pushback against that. What the RMA does, you work in partnership with ADWR, but there's a lot more control on regional water by a county board of supervisors. So for instance, in Mohave County, this board of supervisors would have the authority to declare an RMA or form an RMA rather, on what we call a basin of risk. There would be certain scientific criteria that you have to meet in order to form an RMA and consider a basin at risk. It wouldn't be, you could even do it on for instance, in the Wallapai Basin, you could do the Kingman Sub-Basin and not the other side of the basin. So there's some more flexibility there. There's a lot more local control. The RMA board, the members that would sit on that RMA board are all nominated by this County Board of Supervisors. They have to work together to come up with a goal and a strategy similar to they do in the RMA, but the intent is really just to maintain as much local control as we possibly can.
I guess the drawback or the part that bothers me in AMA, the people can form one, people can vote one in. If this rural management district comes in, the board can do it without, whether the public wants it or not. I guess that's the part that bothers me.
Yeah,
without a vote.
That's well taken, and it wouldn't be formed. An RMA would only be formed if a basin within the county is considered to be at risk, and there would be certain scientific criteria that go along with that. And if it got to a point where you had an RMA formed, they took actions, and the basin became healthier or whatever, I mean, the board would have the opportunity to dissolve that RMA as well. So there's just some additional local control that's plugged into an RMA as opposed to the AMA. So, and I can tell you, in our district, when you look at the Wallapai Basin, 2012 we had like 92 non-exempt wells. Now we're over 242 non-exempt wells. A lot of those are sized 3,000 gallons per minute, 3,500 gallons per minute. That's over 4 million gallons a day if they wanted to. You take that out, it's, model that out, that's not sustainable. People from California, these large agricultural conglomerates and others are coming in and taking advantage of the fact that in rural Mohave County, you can drill as many wells as you want, as large as you want, take as much water out as you want. If you make your neighbor's well go dry, it's legal. So we're just looking for some guardrails and a balancing tool. Thank you.
That was just my concern. I don't like the idea of the board being able to do it as opposed to people voting.
Right.
Chairman Gould?
Supervisor Angus.
I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank Supervisor Lingenfelter for all his hard work on all this water stuff. He's done a fantastic job, and I just wanted to commend him for that. Thank you.
I thank you. Thank you for that. If there's no other discussion, Chairman Gould, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the adoption of U.S. Resolution 2022-068.
Second.
You've heard that motion in second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The ayes appear to have it. You have it. So ordered. Any other issues for the good of the order? If not, motion to adjourn.
So made.
We're adjourned.